Grab your cocktail and get ready for this episode of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian, and I'm excited to introduce as the conspiracy theorists say, a 33rd degree. So he's certainly only going to know all of the information. So Austin Shifrin, who I'm going to introduce, and he's going to talk about his personal. I want to give you a little bit of a bio on him. It's pretty good in a short time. So in less than 20 years ago, in 2006, Austin became a Freemason in Pennsylvania. He's a past master of Tyrian Lodge, number 644 in Lowell, Pennsylvania, Burrell. Past Burrell. All right, there we go. Past Sovereign Prince in the Scottish Rite, Valley of PA. Former secretary of the Lodge ad Lucem.
Yep.
Lucem, 812 in Pittsburgh, PA. He received 5 years ago, he received his 33rd in the Scottish Rite in Milwaukee. He's a member of the Royal Arch chapter, the Cryptic Council. He's a Shriner, Tall Cedars, Allied Masonic Degrees. He's just got so much going on. He's also serving on the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge and the board of Pittsburgh's Dyslexia Center. He wrote his first book, More Light, Collected Masonic Writings from 2017 to 2021. And that was published in 2022. But before you talk about your new book, Black Ink and Further Stars, that was released in July of 2024, we want you to tell us, Austin, who's Austin the man? I already told him who the Mason is, so fire away, my friend.
Pretty cool. Sometimes you don't know exactly where to start unspooling a proper self-portrait. So I'll just kind of go back and say that, I grew up as a kid in New York City. I was there, went to a little bitty private school on the Lower East Side of Manhattan from the age of 4 to about the age of 18. It was a Quaker school called Friends Seminary.
Okay.
Quaker philosophy was something that kind of left a lasting impression on me, so that could easily be a topic we end up coming back to sometime tonight. But when I completed high school and I was looking at colleges, at the time I was kind of interested in computer science, and I managed to get invited into Carnegie Mellon University over here in Pittsburgh. So I opted to come here. And certainly enjoyed my education a great deal, and wound up pivoting from computer science into psychology in my sophomore year. Ended up doing a minor in public policy and management. But I guess one of the other key factors here is that during my undergrad, my senior year of undergrad, I also started singing for a band.
Who doesn't do that, right?
It's just such a funny thing, because I used to be into the arts and creative things, but I had kind of shelved it for a long time. But then my senior year of undergrad, I started singing for a ska band. And
tell me what that is. I don't know what that means.
So ska started in Jamaica in around the 60s or so, preceded reggae. It was kind of like a Jamaican version of jazz. It was
that was my second guess.
Some of the syncopated Caribbean rhythms, but it was their own kind of homegrown, homespun version of jazz. But I started singing for this band during my undergrad, and then I was having so much fun that I was trying to come up with an excuse to stay in Pittsburgh and continue singing with this band. So I wound up in grad school. Well, why not, right?
Right.
Did a master's in public policy and management. The band busted up in 2001, I want to say it was. We did put out a record. It's floating around out there somewhere. We might come back to that topic later too. Anyway, once I had been living in Pittsburgh for long enough and I put down roots, I kind of felt a connection to the city, and I just wanted to stay put. So I wound up, finding employment here. Wound up working in banking and finance for the past almost 20 years. Just made a life for myself here,
Nice. Significant person in your life?
Yes, absolutely. So I live here in the North Hills of Pittsburgh with my girlfriend, Chrissy. We've been together for about 6 years now. That's pretty wild.
That's a long time.
And it's just me and Chrissy and our two cats.
And tell the names. Apollo and
Pablo. Yes, so
okay.
Pablo is named for Pablo Picasso because he's a little black and white cat. But instead of being perfectly symmetrical, he's got these like peculiar markings on his face, so it makes him look like a little cubist painting. So
now, if he didn't have the markings, could he have been named after Pablo Escobar for different reasons?
I'm gonna say, and so this is Chrissy's cat, so I don't want to put words in her mouth.
Well, let's do. She's not here to defend herself. This is what we do.
Oh, yeah, but this is being recorded. Come on now. Is this
Fair.
entrapment? I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm doing.
And you told me none of this gets edited out either.
That is also true.
So that's Pablo, and it's so funny. Like the two cats, they could not be more different. They're like night and day. So Pablo is very sweet and very gentle, and he's a little bit roly-poly, but he's also a smaller cat, and he's black and white. And then there's my cat Apollo, not out of any connection to Greek mythology, but because he was rescued from a farm in Apollo, Pennsylvania. So I named him Apollo.
But not after the boxer from Rocky. So again,
no, nor after Apollo Creed.
Right.
And Apollo is a tabby cat, and he's kind of long and lean, and he's an indoor-outdoor cat, and he's a hunter. And he finished his dinner about like 15 minutes ago, and I had to let him out of the house, or else he'd be rampaging all over here.
Nice.
So that's our boys. It's just
all right.
The boys.
Well, before our viewers think we're going to continue on with a Friskies commercial, let's go over to your new book, Black Ink, Further Stars, and let's talk about Masonically why you feel that our Masons. Now, before I forget, for our followers, his first book, More Light: Collected Masonic Writings, 2017 to 2021. I want you to go into the video description. You'll have a link to how to find that book and some more. Also, you'll find the link for Black Ink Further Stars. So, all right, I'm a Mason. I'm not an avid reader, but I read. So, my friend, tell me why, as a Mason, I should get this book.
Okay. So there is a fair amount of reading material out there now available to the Mason who likes to be intellectually stimulated. I want to know more about the history. I want to know more about the philosophy. I want to know more about the principles. But there is also some territory in Freemasonry that is already very well trodden, right? There are some topics, some subjects that have already just been covered pretty generously. And after I published my first book, I considered myself pretty fortunate that I started getting invited to speak at various different lodges and other Masonic bodies. But for the most part, I wanted to try to compose and present to these gentlemen something that they hadn't already heard 100 times before. And so really part of the origins of the title of this book has to do with peering farther afield, like looking farther out there and recognizing that there's this subject matter that might seem pretty far out, pretty tangential, but actually ties back and gives us an opportunity for a better understanding about the fraternity and its mechanisms, how it operates, and how it changes us. So if you're looking for a read that is not going to cover the same ground that you have already heard, maybe already shared with you artfully many times before, then this might be your next big adventure.
All right. So tell us, what's the More Light?
Well, so More Light is the first book, right?
Right. But in this book, so if we're reading, what further light, more light as a Mason am I going to get?
Right on, man. Yes.
What am I going to get there from Black Ink Further Stars?
So here's what you're going to get. And I'm flipping over my home copy sitting at the desk to make sure that I don't forget anything, because this is like live from New York. It's Saturday night. I don't get any second chances. So the first paper and presentation in there is Ritual Across Time and Space. And it talks about how different cultures throughout history have used the performing arts, theater, to convey moral lessons, to deliver ethical instruction. I know that if you've been to a Blue Lodge degree, or certainly if you've been to a Scottish Rite degree,
Right.
you're going to say to yourself, okay, so instead of getting a lecture on this is what good behavior is, I'm going to see something acted out. I'm going to see
Exactly
an
right.
allegory. I'm going to see people playing roles, and I'm going to see what their actions, their choices, and their consequences were. And this is a mode of ethical instruction. We're not the first ones to do it. It's been done throughout history, and it's been done across many lands. So I did kind of a survey study of other cultures and periods in history where this was done, maybe also emphasizing some of the similarities and differences and how it enhances our understanding of Scottish Rite ritual.
Okay.
Um, the next one is about the Chamber of Reflection. Title of that section or that chapter is The Chamber of Reflection, Mortality, Morphology, and Meaning.
And all of you York Rite guys, you know about the Chamber of Reflection.
Mm-hmm. But it's funny because it's also, even though it hasn't necessarily been implemented in every jurisdiction there is, I think it's becoming kind of a hot topic. I hear people bringing it up from a couple of different corners, a couple of different avenues. And
I would argue in your Blue Lodge degrees, there should be some format of there. Again, you're about to partake in something huge. And maybe the Chamber of Reflection should come after each degree.
I think it could be argued. This could be really one of those Masonic practices that people could even honestly benefit from taking home. Maybe this is
Sure.
something that we need to revisit on some kind of scheduled basis for ourselves as a moment of quiet and calm reflection, taking stock, um, coming to grips with the transitions in our lives, changing seasons. It could be really meaningful.
Sure. Well, no, I agree. I think I would argue this. All Masonic lessons, if we're really paying attention to, they're really life lessons. We like to call them Masonic lessons, but they're really life lessons. So we've got ways to, if you're really listening to the lessons, we know how to deal with this. Imagine this. I'm going to make this up. Imagine you work for a bank and the bank is going to be moving and they're going to sell off all the furniture. And your girlfriend says they're selling the furniture. And she comes in and says, oh my gosh, I want conference room chairs. And you're like, I've got to do a podcast tonight. Imagine we're making this up. This is totally made up. And she said, I want the chairs. Like, but honey, I got to load these in my car. I'll have to double park in downtown Pittsburgh. And I need to get back before 8 o'clock to do this deal. Imagine if that was such a thing. You would be able to deal with it, right? I totally made all of that up. It's not
Yeah,
like
this
it just
is purely
happened at all.
hypothetical, and I'm not going
Purely
to get in any
hypothetical.
domestic trouble whatsoever.
Exactly.
Um,
But just imagine if that was a thing. But I guess we joke, but all of the lessons that we teach are just a reminder of what we're supposed to do anyway. Sometimes we just forget that as men.
sure.
Fair?
I mean, look, it's all well and good to say I memorized a lecture and I can regurgitate it in the context of this room while I'm wearing this suit and tie.
Could you
But
act it out though?
that's the well, or acted it out in an allegory. But you got to know when you walk out of there, and when the circumstances are different, and when the chips are down, and when you're running late for work and somebody cuts you off in traffic, or when you're at the coffee house and somebody accidentally gives you too much change. The question is not whether you can regurgitate the lessons while you're standing at an altar. The question is when the rubber hits the road, who are you? But
You understand the essence of it. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to try to re-angle myself back to where I was at. Yes. Yes. So the Chamber of Reflection. I know that you're going to have listeners who are already, intimately familiar with this. You will possibly have some other listeners who are not, and it's supposed to be a time and a place where men who are about to become Masons are contemplating their own mortality. And I think to the outside world, this looks like one of those spooky things that is supposed to raise concerns about what Freemasonry is and what it does. But the fact of the matter is that the Chamber of Reflection, this contemplation of death, should enrich and inspire us to respect and appreciate the value of our life, the value of our finite time, and what we can do with it, the kind of impact we can leave behind when eventually we are gone. So that's why I wrote this second chapter. The next section is the Tarot of Virtue. So this was just a fortunate offshoot of an experience that I had at Lodge Ad Lucem, because our master at the time, Max Hammer, did a presentation about a contemporary French philosopher by the name of André Comte Sponville. And Sponville has a book entitled A Small Treatise on the Great Virtues. He has a list, a system of 18 virtues, and he says some of them are more simple and basic, things like politeness. There are other more sophisticated and challenging virtues that we gradually can evolve into by learning the basic and fundamental ones first, and we work our way through this system of 18 virtues where we should learn to practice the ultimate virtue, which is love. As I was listening to Max's presentation, and he rattled off the names of some of the virtues in Sponville's system, I couldn't help but my ears pricked up, because I said, I remember that the names of a handful of these virtues are also the titles of some of the tarot cards. But even as Max worked his way further through Sponville's system, I realized that some of the virtues corresponded to not the major arcana cards from the tarot, which have these titles of things like justice and temperance, things that we know are virtues, but the minor arcana have these illustrations of scenes, tableaus with people in society interacting with each other that also represent some of these other virtues. And the more I thought about it, I found correspondences to all 18 of the virtues in Sponville's system. So I thought to myself, whether you put any stock in the tarot as being some kind of tool of prediction and divination, or you don't, which is fine, the images from these cards could be used as memory aids to study this system of 18 virtues. So I wrote that chapter. Then I had an invitation to present at an ingathering of a couple of different councils of Allied Masonic Degrees. And I'm familiar with Allied Masonic Degrees because I belong to one of the bodies, but I have always heard a lot of the people in that circle also discussing a different group called the Grand College of Rites. And I knew that they were somehow connected with each other and yet still distinct. So almost just to satisfy my own curiosity, for this occasion, to make this presentation, I did some research into how the Allied Masonic Degrees and the Grand College of Rites complement each other, how they work together in symbiosis. So that's that next chapter. And the last chapter in here is the physical properties of the Old Testament. So it basically talks about how we can better understand the stories of the Old Testament, and by extension, some of those which appear in both Blue Lodge ritual and the ritual of other appendant bodies, how we can have a better grasp of what those anecdotes, what those degrees might have, what the setting was intended to be like, how it was supposed to evoke a feeling of our presence in that setting if we understand the physical properties better. What were the buildings made of? What were the substances used to make or to dye clothes? What were the jewels and the stones? Like when we hear these things referenced, if the skins of animals that were used for fabricating things, if we hear these referenced but they're not very familiar to us, the unfamiliar vocabulary can sort of jar us out of feeling embedded in that moment. So to help us feel more integrated into the story, what were those physical settings all about? And that's what that last chapter is.
Nice. So what platforms are we going to be able to find it on? Everywhere?
So this is, I'm glad you asked. They're both, the short answer is they're both available at Amazon. That's the easiest thing. So
sure.
If you are looking for either book, you can go to Amazon, you can search for either the book titles or my name, and you will find both of these books. The only slightly longer version of this story is More Light, the first book, is available a little bit more broadly as well. So you can also find it at Barnes and Noble. You can, online, you can find it at Ingram Spark. So there's a couple of other different outlets that you can find it through, but they are both available at Amazon. And I know that's someplace that a lot of people tend to shop. So
nice. So I'm a little bit familiar with the book world. My wife has been on, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 book launch teams for very big authors. And it's really kind of interesting how they do that. They'll be, and they'll come out and it's really interesting how you get the New York Times bestsellers and how that's setting with the reads and all that. So you get kind of a different side to that. You're thinking, oh my gosh, you must be it's a totally different world. So if you want to support a Mason, definitely go there. Is there another avenue where they can go direct to your website and cut out the middleman?
You know what? I haven't created that yet.
Okay.
I know that there are people with business acumen who advocate for this, and it's at this stage, because I have not yet had the opportunity to pivot to just being a author and pundit full time.
Sure.
I'm taking advantage of some of the infrastructure that's already been built out.
Of course. Yeah, it's very easy to do stuff on Amazon. I mean, they'll print it, bind it, and do everything for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
It truly is. But I definitely foresee that being a move somewhere in my not too distant future.
Sure. No, that'd be great, and great way the guys listening can find that out. So before we, definitely want to have you back on some other episodes, but before we go off, I want to ask you some questions. We'll kind of come off the book here a little bit.
Certainly.
What obviously, membership and all joining organizations are down, whether it's Lions Club and whatnot. So I've got two questions. So I'm going to ask you one, which will lead to the other. So the first question is, why do you think more men aren't joining Masonry today?
Oh, it's a challenging question because I think only because I'm not one who is comfortable firing off opinions that aren't necessarily grounded in data. Like my day job, this whole banking thing we were talking about, I'm a data guy.
Okay.
Right?
What's your gut tell you?
I know some facts, and then I can, flesh this out with some speculation, but I'm also going to acknowledge up front, throw out a caveat that says, I know that some of this may be more a reflection of my opinion than necessarily having hard data to back.
That's exactly why we're asking your opinion, for sure.
But there are solitary pursuits that have become so much more popular over the course, not just recently, but over the course of decades, right? There's that fellow who came out with that sociological study called Bowling Alone, that touches on some of these topics. But ultimately, I think that there is, at the risk of not answering your question, there's less of a problem of new or younger men choosing not to join Freemasonry than people may believe there is. I think that there's a lot of lamentation going on right now that it's not happening, but I think we're actually starting to see this trend turn around.
All right, let me ask you this question. Let me take you off the hot seat and go this way. Could it be that our membership has been off because and it could improve now because of things like the internet? Now we are putting ourselves out there a little bit more, that we may be rebranding ourselves, that we're not the quiet, reserved, old, rich, white guy club, that we actually invite everyone. Could that be part of the shift, that there are guys that are out there, but they don't understand our message because we haven't been embracing the new way of communication? I
think that's something that we not only have the opportunity to leverage in our favor, but we are finally taking advantage of.
Fair.
You have some organizations like some of the Grand Lodges.
California, they are hot right now.
Right? Pennsylvania's doing a nice job with this, but even on a larger scale, you have Supreme Council Northern Masonic Jurisdiction for Scottish Rite.
For sure.
That has a budget, and then by extension can have a staff, which means you've got people committed full-time to not only being able to produce content, but to study the market, if you will, and understand.
That content is offsetting the budget too. They are doing very well.
Yeah,
You can
it's
sure find
reaching
out what they're
people, it's
making. It's
working.
easy.
So here's where the left hand and the right hand need to help each other, right?
Okay.
I have a presentation coming up tomorrow night. Tomorrow night at one of the Blue Lodges, about a half hour from here. I have a presentation coming up for their Past Masters night. And I sort of composed the title and then worked my way towards the title. I said, okay, I know what I want the title of the presentation to be, and I'm going to work towards what fulfills the title. And it's Hidden Treasure, Our Past Masters. Because I'm going to be presenting to a room full of past masters.
Right.
And at first, my plan was to write a presentation all about the qualities that tend to be common to past masters, and therefore why they are such an important asset to the lodge. And it occurred to me as I started writing that a lot of the things I consider the inherent qualities of past masters are not necessarily exclusive to past masters. They are common to other experienced brethren as well. And then I had a little epiphany and I said, I know one way in which past masters tend to score higher, if you will, than just the rest of the field of experienced members. And that is in their sense of ownership. Because of the time and effort that they have invested in their lodge, they feel very comfortable with both the psychological notion and with saying out loud, my lodge, this is my lodge. But this needs to be broken out and shared, right? Because you have new members having to Blue Lodges in a way that they never did before historically. It used to be a fellow who was brought into a craft lodge, into a Blue Lodge, was brought by somebody who was also already very active there, and then would be involved in that process of gradually introducing him around and helping forge the relationships between the new guy and the quote-unquote old guys until the new guy felt like an old guy and could comfortably say, my lodge. Right? But now we are grateful for the tools that technology has put at our disposal, like the fact that somebody could go to the Grand Lodge website, use the lodge locator, have the Grand Lodge put him in touch with the secretary of the Blue Lodge closest to his neighborhood, yada, yada, yada. But when he walks in there, he doesn't genuinely know anybody in person. So if what he, and now I'm everybody, but if he walks into a room and he encounters a bunch of little insular groups of guys talking amongst themselves and doesn't feel warmly welcomed in, then he's never going to get that sense of psychological ownership.
Yep.
But the people who have that ownership in spades need to now share that treasure, and that treasure will be multiplied.
Yep.
The feeling of ownership they have won't diminish just because they share it with somebody else. It will increase.
I agree. Well, I think we ought to get you back on and definitely do that piece. So, but Austin, thank you for taking the time to come out to the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast.
Which way do I need to
appreciate you.
This way. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh yeah. There we go. Thank you.